All right, Chair McQueen, we are recording and live streaming. As I noted, we're still awaiting Councillor O'Leary, and Councillor Soever has sent his regrets. So I'll hand the meeting over to you, sir. You are on mute.
Sorry about that. We do have quorum, right?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Affordable Housing Task Force meeting. Our agenda was published on our website, so for those who are following along or wish to see what we're talking about today. So we do have a published agenda. So to start off with, we do have a declaration of pecuniary interest to the items on today's agenda. So are there any declaration of pecuniary interest with our members today? All right, so I don't hear anything, so let's we'll carry on. So then our next item is item 3A with regards to request for proposal for architectural services at 396 14th Street Owen Sound project. And we do have a motion there. Would we care to put that on the floor, please? Speak up, please, because I'm sort of on my, I don't see everybody on my screen. So
Councillor Burley moves, Councillor Keaveney seconds.
okay, so thank you for that. And so moving on then, we'll have that report. I just got to go to my part of the agenda here. Where is that report? Bear with me here. So that is brought forward by Anne-Marie and Kim. So Anne-Marie, would you like to speak to that report, please?
Thank you, Chair McQueen. So
and
the
good morning
report,
and Happy New Year.
Good morning. The report before you is basically an update on where we are with our process of purchasing and renovating the property at 396 14th Street in Owen Sound. The report starts off by mentioning the need, and I think yesterday Josh Gibson did an excellent report on our enumeration results. And also the need for our by name list implementation in the county to address our growing need of people that are experiencing homelessness. The by name list currently has 120 people that have come forward and that are receiving services from community agencies. Of those, 53 are chronically facing chronic homelessness, and we have successfully housed 20 people permanently from that list and continue to work with people in order to provide housing. We have 14 supportive spaces that will be available early this year. 11 of those were renovated through the Social Services Relief Fund Phase 4. They are all complete. And people are moving in as we speak, which is excellent. But the report yesterday also highlighted the need for more supportive housing in our area, or just more housing plus supports. So I think moving forward with this project highlights that there is a great need and that this project can fill a great need too. So at the Affordable Housing Task Force meeting on October 26th, we were directed to negotiate an agreement. In the meantime, since then, there have been environmental investigations that have been completed as part of one of the conditions, as well as engineering reports have been provided. Happy to say, since writing this report, that the report has from GM Blue Plan was presented to our Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, and Grey Sauble Conservation Authority has provided us with comment. Their comments are that the report is that it would be favorable in their view for us to submit a application for site plan approval. So we're very happy that our last condition, then we are able to waive that today, and that does move us in order to obtain the title of the property on January 20th. So it's been a lot of deadlines, quick deadlines, and we're appreciative to all of our community partners. GM Blue Plan, working with the city, has been great too in order to move forward with purchasing the property.
That's
So
great. That's
yes,
great news.
Very nice. So that leaves us down to the request for proposal for our architectural services. We're looking, because we have such tight timelines with the province, we're looking at putting this proposal out January 21st. Part of the proposal, we're looking at architectural services for 4 phases of the renovation. The first is the schematic design and development phase. During that phase, the architect would be providing us drawings and other documents that we would require for our site plan approval. They would provide us a cost estimate. The city of Owen Sound, as part of our pre-consultation with them, has requested a grading plan and also a servicing feasibility study. So we would work with the architect in order to provide those 2 studies also. And we've also are wanting the architect to provide us with some expertise on sustainable design, looking at environmentally friendly initiatives and energy efficiency. The next phase would be our construction document phase. So we would be relying on the architect at that time to provide us our construction documents, would provide us of any another cost estimate, because we would be further along in the process. We would have another cost estimate, and we would also then work on with us on any necessary bidding information that might be required to go out for bid for a contractor. They would also assist us during the bidding and negotiation phase when it comes to negotiating the proposal and awarding and preparing contracts for construction. And lastly, would work on us with the construction phase. During that phase, they would be providing a general review of the work. They would be looking at issuing certificates for payment, preparing change orders and change directives in consultation with ourselves, determining substantial performance of work, and of course, verifying the contractor's application for final payment. Timeline-wise, we are looking at January 21st. The RFP would be out for proposal. There would be a mandatory site meeting the 28th, and the RFP would close on February 4th. We would require preliminary drawings around March 4th. And final tender drawings for March 31st. The preliminary drawings that we would receive would be used to submit for site plan approval with the City of Owen Sound. And we're hoping that we would have an RFP out for contracted services for tender in May, and then start construction in June. Timelines with the province in meeting for them, we do have to start within 90 days of signing our agreement with them, which leads us basically until the end of April. We do figure that in May we could get in there and provide some demo. There are a few little things that would require demos, so we would be on time to meet their deadlines. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Anne-Marie, and you sure got laid out in all the time frames, and that's great. All the information is right there. Madam CEO, do you have anything to add before I go to questions? Okay, so I'm just scrolling my screen here. Any questions from committee members? Go ahead, Councillor Burley, and then Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, Andrea, it's a great, very, very tight time schedule for these professionals, and hopefully you won't have any problem with it. But we're very close to a lame duck situation. We're probably ahead of that schedule, but is there any thoughts towards that, or is it a worry or not? Because it would only take one delay with the architects trying to get things together to put us maybe in that situation. I'm just curious.
Anne-Marie or maybe Madam CEO?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Certainly, it's a discussion that the clerk and I have had that will ensure that the appropriate documentation is put in place for all of Grey County's administrative matters, so that with council's support, I'll be able to keep things moving along for those things that are still in play or are currently in play. And, you know, we wanted to put something out there. I think that communicated to the potential bidders how important it was that this project kept moving along. I think there's always room for negotiations in these situations, but we didn't want anyone to bid under some sort of false pretense that there was all the time in the world to get this done. So hopefully, we'll get somebody with the capacity to be able to move on this. If we need to negotiate a little bit with them to, make things work, we can do that. But I think it was important to be clear that getting it done next year isn't really going to work for us. So.
Okay, thank you, Madam CEO. Any follow-up to that, Councillor Burley?
No, that's fine, Madam Chair or Mr. Chair. It is a very, very tight schedule, and hopefully everything works out.
It certainly will work out. Be positive. Okay, thank you for that. And I think to the clerk, I think the cutoff is pushed back this term of the election to the end of August. If I recall, there's a certain date there where that cutoff time is.
It is.
So it's not like
the last day for nominations is sometime middle to, I want to say the 19th of August, but I'm not 100% sure. So.
Yes, you're right, Heather.
Yeah.
It is August 19th.
Okay. Yeah, I remember 2 terms ago, it was like you could sign up May 1st, and the last, I think it was like 20 something in July of last time. So they pushed it back a little bit, probably for that reason of getting the business done of that in your term. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. And Councillor Burley's question leads into my thoughts as well. I was going to ask about concerns, with COVID and supply chain and everything already being behind in the construction industry, and how we felt that would play into this, because I totally understand we want to get this moved forward. We want to get people moved in as soon as we possibly can. So I'm just concerned about increased pricing and so on if we're pushing those timelines. So it, and you somewhat answered that, Anne Marie, but I'll leave it to you for something you want to add.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, that's always a possibility. We have just completed 3 renovations this year with nonprofits. We weren't the lead on it, but we were working closely with them. And the province was very understandable with some of the deadlines, moving slightly here and there. So that was, and they were able to, because they're a renovation, they're a little bit smaller, not exactly a huge build. The timelines, we were able to meet them, but we were down to the wire in meeting those timelines for December 31st. We had 2 projects that finished December 30th, and the other one was the end of November. So I think that it will be a factor, but we'll just deal with it as we can. So.
Marie, you're a pro.
Absolutely.
You're a real pro, so you'll you'll just follow along perfectly. Councillor Keaveney, anything to follow up on that?
No, that's great, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And I have total faith in Anne Marie as well. No pressure, but we know you've got a whip in your back pocket, and you'll use it if you need to.
Other questions? I think the warden, did you indicate, Mr. Warden? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Anne Marie, for this report. It's great to see this project moving forward. I listened carefully to you when you spoke, and it just hit me. You talked about supportive housing and housing plus supports, which I think is a good distinction to make, because we know that we can't talk about housing, it seems, without some sort of support. So I like that you're creating this distinction between supportive housing and housing with supports. And we heard, council heard yesterday from Phil Dodd, the executive director, I guess, of Keystone, that from a children's mental health perspective, they have capacity, but they are underfunded. So they're capable of doing more, but they just don't have the financial resources, I guess. It begs the question about whether it's the same issue in non-adult type of mental health supports. And I know Barb is not on the call, and it may not be fair to ask you this, but I'd be really interested to know whether the adult side of mental health supports are in the same situation as Phil Dodd mentioned for for youth and for young people. Because housing is just one piece, right? And yes, this committee is supposed to be focused on affordable housing, and we are, but we know that we can't talk about affordable housing without also talking about those supports that are so necessary. So I don't know if you're able to comment on that, but it's just a question that I have in my head. Is it the same for the adult side of the equation?
It very much so is the same. In our own housing, we have community relation workers, and that community relation worker will help find supports for our tenants, whether it's mental health, addictions, physical health, whatever they may need. They're there to help with those supports. And there certainly is a lack of supportive housing, or a lack of those supports in the community. Our mental health supports for adults are severely underfunded. There's wait lists at CMHA for a lot of our tenants and those that are not our tenants that are looking for services. They do the best that they can with what they have, but we do know that there certainly is a need for more supports. We see that within our own housing. We also see that within our by names list. We have now a large increase over the past 2 years in people that are reporting as homelessness and need services. Since the beginning of COVID, 2019, I think we saw a double in 2020, and then we saw it double again in 2021, the need. And as Phil Dog mentioned yesterday, a lot of the services that you can start upstream, so you can start when people are younger and are great, but there's generations that didn't have that ability because, again, of a lack of money and a lack of resources in the entire system. So there is a review going on at the provincial level right now, looking at supportive housing and mental health supports. So there is a recognition that there needs to be some system changes, and that there needs to be a lot more funding and resources put into that system. And I think it goes to show with the project that we're trying to do right now is that we recognize that as people in housing, we don't necessarily have the expertise in the support services, but we do have the expertise in building the bricks and mortar building and doing that management of the building. So if we can continue to do projects where we're taking funds and community resources, and we're using our funds for development of housing and putting them together, I think those are excellent ways in which we can provide supports. We already do it in all of our RGR, rent geared to income housing that we have right now. We've got that bricks and mortar, and we bring in those services. So if we can create more opportunity, the project that we're looking at, though, is going to help house people that need a little bit more help than just that 1 or 2 visits a week from a worker, to help them move on with what they may need and gather all those supports to be able to live independently.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Mr. Ward, do you have anything to follow up on that?
Oh, thank you for that answer. It was very fulsome. I may be a little bit off topic, and I'm sure our clerk will correct me if I go too far off. But broadband, when we're looking at developing affordable housing, is that part of the plan when we go into the design, or is that just something that we order and hope that they bring it in? Do we need to do anything in terms of preparing for that?
So we now have broadband in all of our buildings available, either in the common room and in the common rooms at least. But that's certainly something that we'll be looking at for this supportive housing model. It's very important. It's a necessity. So it's certainly something that we would be providing.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Any further comments, questions with regards to the motion on the floor with regards to moving forward? Just looking here. Madam Clerk, did Councillor O'Leary, I think he's still off our meeting.
No, Councillor O'Leary joined us
anybody
partway through the report.
Oh, he did. Okay, I just didn't see him on my screen here. So,
good morning,
right.
Mr. Chair. I apologize for being late. I thought I could get to Southampton and back this morning, and I was got held up a little bit. So my apologies.
Well, if you were going to Singhampton, it would have taken a little longer. So Southampton's a little closer. So there you go. All right. So we have a motion on the floor. I don't know if you have any questions to that. Maybe you came partway through that. It's moved in second with regards to moving forward with housing on 396 14th Street own sound project. I see no. Councilor Lear, do you have any questions to that? I'm not trying to ask you if you do. I just want to make sure.
I'm good, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Seeing there's no other questions, is there anybody opposed to that motion? Okay, that's carried in. And Emery, you got your marching orders, and away you go. You can stay a little longer at the meeting, but all right. So there's some other business here with regards to some verbal updates, and I guess I'm passing that over. Who's taking those verbal updates?
I believe that I'm on the first one, but I believe I covered it during my report. So probably just a little excited to let everybody know that all the conditions were waived. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions with regards to the waiver of conditions for the agreement?
I believe Kim
I
has.
see. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Madam CEO.
Thank you so much. And I just want to ensure that the task force is aware that in this building, there were a number of tenants. So we're engaged in some conversations with those tenants. There's a couple who didn't really have a lease, who were there, and they've asked if they can stay a little bit longer while they actively look for alternative arrangements. And given that we're not into our construction, I don't think it is a problem for us. We are doing the paperwork to ensure that there's a proper legal arrangement between ourselves and them, and that they have their own insurance, et cetera. The other tenant is Eat Local Grave Roofs. And so we're working very closely, economic development and Anne Marie and her staff have been working very closely with Eat Local. Certainly that's an important stakeholder of ours, and we want to support them to find a new spot. But of course, anybody that's familiar with the real estate market knows that we're not awash in commercial real estate at the minute. So we have another meeting with them set up on Monday. We've looked at a couple of places which I thought were going to work out, and then it turned out that there was some technicality that meant that that particular spot wasn't going to be a new home for them. But we are still very hopeful that we'll get them landed appropriately before we need the space vacant to actually start construction.
Very accommodating. That's great to hear. Okay. So then on item B, then verbal update on surplus county municipal lands.
Yeah, thanks, Chair McQueen, and good morning to the task force here this morning. So the task force may recall that in 2021, the county had submitted a funding application to CMHC to look at getting some funds to move the project forward to investigate both our surplus county and municipal lands for the purposes of providing affordable housing. We weren't actually successful in getting that funding, so that was too bad. But luckily, we've been able to pivot, and through some funding through the Social Services Relief Fund, we have been able to allocate some funds to this project. And I'm pleased to announce that we've hired Liz Buckton, formerly of the municipality of Meaford, on a contract basis to help us tackle this project. So Liz will be working alongside county staff in our housing department and in our planning department to start to investigate the lands that we've mapped across the county that include both county and municipal lands to see A, whether there's any that could be deemed surplus, and then B, if there is, would those lands be suitable for affordable housing? And similar to the discussion on the report here this morning, there's a number of factors that would need to go into that consideration. And Liz and our county staff will be working very closely with your own municipal staff to investigate some of those factors. But they include some of the hard services, the water and sewer and broadband and everything like that. But they also include some of the supports that I think the warden was talking about earlier this morning. So, this affordable housing wouldn't necessarily be county-run affordable housing. We'd be looking hopefully to partner with not-for-profits and or possibly developers to develop the sites. But if we had two equal sites and from a servicing and zoning perspective, but one was closer to a number of community supports and one was maybe a little further out, then that might tip the favor in place of the one that was closer to those community supports. So one of the key things that Liz will be doing in the early part of this project is to start to map out what that criteria is. What do we need to see in place that will make for a successful site? And again, in terms of those hard and soft services. And so this work that Liz will be doing will be implementing the direction of this task force that was established and put into the housing action plan. So we're very excited for that. And for those that might not be familiar with Liz, she worked for Meaford for a number of years and is very well respected in the community and in the planning world. And she's got a real passion for community dialogue and reaching consensus and also for housing in that regard. So we were thrilled that she was interested in working on this project with us. And the end goal will be to get to a stage after dialogue with municipal staff and dialogue with stakeholders in the community where we have a list of properties that might be suitable to go out to a request for proposals on. And we fully are aware that some of these projects might be more short-term in nature in that they might be ready to go very shortly. And there might be others that we need to look into further and might be more medium to long-term. So in some cases, there might need to be zoning changes or investigate extension of services or something like that. So we want to have a full suite such that for the years ahead, we've got a steady stream of projects hopefully coming forward in that regard. So that's just a quick update. And I think I said that Liz starts Monday on this project and will be working with us for 30 weeks. And so I'm sure we'll have her present before this task force at some point in the future. So if there's any questions, be happy to take any.
Thanks for that verbal report there, Scott. Any questions from committee members? I'm sure there's lots of available lands that could be possibilities out there. Go ahead, Councillor Keaveney.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair and Scott. Yes, I'm really pleased that you'll be engaging Liz in this project. Certainly, I know her well, and I know she'll be a great asset to the county in this endeavor. So you mentioned 30 weeks, so that's kind of the timeline then for the project in terms of coming back with the report. And I'm wondering, at any point during that time frame, is there any level of public engagement, or was this strictly a conversation between the county and the potential stakeholders, and you mentioned developers, because we know that there's always concerns from any neighbors of potential affordable housing projects. And I'm just wondering if any of that aspect is included in this work.
Scott?
Yeah, great question, Councillor Keaveney, and through you, Mr. Chair. We haven't mapped out all the milestones of this project, but we're aware that communications is going to be a very key component. And as I said, it'll start with municipal staff and likely move on to stakeholders in terms of not-for-profits and other such groups. But in speaking with Liz prior to finalizing, working with her, we've talked about sort of that public component. And I think there's going to be a few different elements to it. One will be sort of an education component, and our housing team and planning and communications and economic development have already started to work on that over the past couple of years. But there's definitely going to need to be some further discussions. And so as to when that would come or how far we get within that 30 weeks, we're not 100% sure at this stage, but there will need to be those community discussions, and it might start as some broader community discussions, and that might get into once we've got some target sites identified, we can have more focused in. And what we found in the past is that sometimes when we have the broader community discussions, it's tough to get people to the table, and it's tough to get people to give us their input. But if we have a site and say, hey, by the way, down your street, there's going to be potentially some affordable housing. People are very willing to come to the table at that stage.
Yes, you just, it's all in the delivery, eh, Scott? Councillor Keaveney, do you have a follow-up to that or any questions to that?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And just one further question, if I may, Scott. Do you expect that this particular work with Liz will also involve any potential funding models or opportunities or any exploration of funding for said projects?
Scott?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. That's one of the things that we want to research further with Liz in terms of the funding models. There's a few things that we already have working in our favor, and our county housing department has already done a project in the past whereby we had a site that was surplus in Durham, and we were able to go out to an RFP on that. But we want to work collectively between the county and the municipalities within our respective community improvement plans to look at potential funding there, as well as looking at any other funding opportunities that were to come available, whether it be through CMHC or others. But one of the other things that we want her to investigate early in this project is what the long-term ownership model is for these lands. And my understanding, Anne-Marie can jump in and correct me if I go too far astray here, is that on the Durham model, they were surplus county lands, and we issued an RFP and sort of had a threshold for the amount of units we wanted, and then we could have some market units on top of that. And then the lands were ultimately transferred to the developer with an agreement that the units had to be affordable for a certain number of years. One of the things we've recently heard about in some other municipalities, some other communities outside of Gray, is in some cases they've used a very similar model, but it hasn't been a full-on transfer to the developer or the not-for-profit. It's actually been a 99-year lease, such that those lands remain in either county or municipal ownership in that regard. So we're well aware of sort of the Durham model, but we want to look at what other models are out there as well, and what could create long-term sustainability for this project. Because one of the things that's sort of going on in the back of our minds is that we have a finite pool of land at this stage. And if in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we run through that finite pool, what comes after that? So investigating that ownership or long-term lease model will be a component of that.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Councillor Keaveney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you indulge me one more question with Scott on this?
Sure.
Thank you. Scott, and certainly you can say no, but I'm also wondering if there's any opportunity through this process for engagement with, there are some local groups who are also very concerned and active in the area of affordable housing and who have done considerable research, in, such as the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay. And I'm wondering if there's any opportunity for discussions with those groups through this process with Liz, just to take advantage of the research that they've gathered and the connections and so on.
Scott?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think that's an excellent suggestion. And I think, as much as possible, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if individual groups have already done studies or already done research on this, we want to borrow and steal as much as we can in a friendly way, of course. But there's lots of great materials out there, including stuff that we've done at the county, but also there was the Southern Georgian Bay report a few years ago that was excellent. So we really want to build on and work with those groups. Another key stakeholder here that I forgot to mention is some of our larger employers. And we know that the affordable housing issue is affecting our labor pool issue. Groups like Blue Mountain Resort and Chapman's Ice Cream have come to the table in the past to say, this is a major issue. So through our partners at Economic Development, I think they will be other key stakeholders that we need to engage here.
That's really terrific, Scott. So if I may, I'll reach out to you outside of this meeting with some further suggestions in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shirley. And any other comments to Scott on that? All right, seeing none then. My computer has went to sleep here, so I'm pulling up the agenda. So if you want, is there any, go ahead, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much just on this, but in listening to this and in having this discussion, I just want to thank our staff, honestly, because when you think of the issue of, you can say affordable housing problem, but the actual solution coming up with the plan and the implementation, because we're coming at this thing from so many angles. And I have a great appreciation for what our staff are doing. I mean, consider this, we're coming at it from a social services perspective, coming at it from a planning perspective, from an infrastructure, from finance and, a political perspective and communications and legal. When you consider all the things that have to happen to make an affordable housing plan work in terms of implementation. It's one thing for us to offer the vision and say, yeah, we think affordable housing should be addressed, but to actually do it, my gosh, there's a lot of work going on. I'm so thankful to our staff for everything I see coming forward. I just think it's really important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, thank you for those words, Mr. Warden. Any other comments to Scott then? All right, so then moving on then to our official plan amendment number 11, update on housing related proposed policy changes. So is that Randy or is that Scott?
It's Scott again. This is again another action item in the housing action plan that this task force identified, is to not only look at our own county official plan policies and look at updating our housing policies, but also working with, of course, our local municipalities and updating local official plan documents and zoning bylaws. So this is another one of those steps in terms of trying to check off some of those boxes in that housing action plan. So Scott has an update in terms of where we're moving forward with the housekeeping as it relates to housing related policies.
Thanks, Randy. And Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Randy, and thanks, Chair McQueen. So council will be aware that we have proposed official plan amendment number 11. So this update, more than anything else, might be for anybody that might be tuning into this meeting and not a regular viewer of our county committee of the whole on council sessions. But we have scheduled OPA 11, and it's kind of a multi-pronged official plan amendment in this regard. We're implementing our growth management strategy, but there's a number of what we're calling housekeeping items. And a number of these housekeeping items are getting at addressing some of the comments and the feedback we've heard, as Randy said, from this affordable housing task force and matters that were included in the housing action plan in this regard. So we're updating our policies to make them more permissive with respect to what we call additional residential units. That's the term that the province is using now. It used to be called secondary suites or secondary apartments. So in this regard, what we've done is we've proposed policies to say that you could have a secondary apartment within your home. So it could be a basement apartment or a ground floor apartment, but you could also have a secondary apartment within a detached accessory structure as well. And that's a bit of a change from a few years ago when the county updated our plan in this regard to say that you could have either or, i.e. either one in the house or one in an accessory structure. The province has now made some changes to the Planning Act to say it's not an either or, it's an and. So you need to allow them in both. So we're updating our policies there to make that very clear. We're also providing some further clarity with respect to policies that would be supportive of tiny homes. Of course, they still need to meet the Ontario Building Code, but we've had some clarifications there based on some questions we've had about our previous policies. We've made some further suggestions for tweaks to our residential policy, our residential density policies, and so these primarily apply in our service settlement areas. We've added a new section in the plan at the direction of this task force on co-housing to make sure we're supportive of a wide variety of housing types in this regard. And further to the last update, we've added proposed a section in the plan that speaks to this surplus municipal and county lands project. So just putting it out there on, front and forward in the plan that this is something that's of an interest to the county. And so I should be clear that these are all proposed policies at this stage. We've had a very initial report through committee of the whole, but we've just recently scheduled and circulated for our public meeting, which is coming up on February 3rd. So we're really looking forward to hearing feedback from the public in this regard, and also from the development community. And then following that feedback, we'll synthesize the comments we heard, make any further changes to the proposed official plan amendment 11, and then bring a final report back to committee and council for their consideration, hopefully later, maybe mid 2022 here. So that's all I have at this stage, but certainly if there are any questions, be happy to answer any.
Thanks, Scott. And what's the time on February 3rd?
It's February 3rd at 1:30 p.m. It is based on our current situation, a virtual meeting, of course. Based on this being a county public meeting, we don't need a quorum of council in attendance at that meeting. Right. We have the warden committed to chairing on behalf, but council is certainly welcome to attend and certainly provide any feedback there, but we don't strictly need a quorum.
It's always sometimes good to listen to. So it will be recorded. So if the county councilors or others wish to follow it at a later date, that will be available.
Yeah, that is one of the wonderful benefits of our current situation is all our meetings are recorded, so they get to be preserved online afterwards.
Fantastic. Okay. Any questions to that from committee members? Great to hear. All right. I don't see any comments there. I did click on it here, so it does feed you into a lot of those parts that you were speaking with or speaking about. All right. Seeing there's no other questions. Next one then, the housing recommendations from the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force. Who would like to take that?
I'll take that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Staff are busy putting together a final report for the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force. As part of the housing section, a lot of the recommendations are similar to ones that are already in our action plan or would fit very nicely within our action plan. So I was requesting if we could look at bringing the recommendations to avoid duplication, having the recommendations from the Hanover Owen Sound plan come to this task force.
Okay.
I think that would be okay with everyone.
Yep. And when you're looking at so that'll be coming real soon, right?
Yes, I believe they're looking at February for the for the final report, and then any of those recommendations would come to this task force in a report after February. Just looking at implementation and putting them into our affordable housing plan. It just makes sense in our mind and staff's mind to avoid duplication that all housing recommendations are in one area.
Sure. Thank you for that. Questions? Anyone have questions? All right. I don't see anybody there. So thank you for that update then. And next there's a resolution from the County of Huron. And Madam Clerk, I think you are receiving or asking for a motion to receive that correspondence.
Yes, we are asking for motion to receive for information. We have supported a couple of other of these in the past from the City of Niagara and another county that escapes me right now in the last 6 months or so. So we are receiving this for information.
Okay, and this is ratified on October 6th. Or sorry, it was brought forward on October 6th, ratified on October 20th. Would somebody care to move this for information? Just looking through my screen here. So Councillor Keaveney and I see Councillor Burley. Okay, so that's moved in second then. And any discussion on that correspondence? Just scrolling through here. No. Okay, so I don't see any discussion. Good read. So anybody opposed to that motion? All right, that is carried then. And going back to the agenda, our date of our next meeting to be determined. I just wondered if we're able to send that out. I know I had a conflict here this morning myself, but is there, I know we put it out there. I guess, Madam Clerk, I guess you sort of see if it sticks.
We will, I'll work with Kim, Randy, and Anne Marie on topics, and we'll get the next agenda or meeting scheduled as soon as possible. Okay,
that sounds super. So you're requesting then, is there any other discussion for today's meeting from committee members? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn then, please? Councillor O'Leary, second by, I'm scrolling here. Who do I have second to here?
Counselor Burley,
Councilor Burley. Oh, yes, I knew he'd be in there. All right. Anybody opposed to that motion? All right, that's carried. Well, have a fantastic weekend, everyone, and it's supposed to get cold, so make sure you got your mittens and your toques and enjoy the winter wonderland. So,
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye,
Goodbye.
thank you.